Welcome back to Interview Ninja Step 39. Working in a team and a few leadership styles that are used, helping you become more aware of social interaction in an academic, which you're used to perhaps, and a workplace environment, which may be new for you. Some steps towards understanding what's really going on. It's a subject called interpersonal dynamics, and it involves several soft skills. There's lots and lots on YouTube about it, some of it okay, and you may want to look at that after you've watched this through.
Working in high tech as a salesman, the model used to be 4 tech support people for every sales guy.
When you go for an interview, in all probability, the potential employer is looking for people to join a team or several teams. I see an opportunity to talk about team leadership. Corben is going to need this if he's going to do more in music than just be a good instrument player. He already shows potential to lead groups, and I want to start him thinking about management soft skills. Management involves emotional as well as social intelligence. There are lots of soft skills involved. In fact, good management is nearly all soft skills, and in the next few minutes you'll hear me outline a few of them. Developing your soft skills is not just something to think about for the future. It's something you need to start now. So start developing those intelligences that you have, emotional, social, and your practical applied functional intelligences, and put that as high a priority as developing your academic learning. Not necessarily way above, but you need all 4 to have a good life.
So I used to have a team of tech support people working with me to put forward a proposal. So let's say we as a company are invited to put forward a proposal to put computers into all the British Telecoms vans that go around mending and installing electrical cables and telephone wires.
Yeah.
So you've got this RFP, it's called Request for Proposal. It's a blooming great document that says, put forward a proposal. Now, I've got to put that proposal forward, but I need tech support people to do it because they're subject matter experts. They know stuff I don't know.
The proposal I was building was for about 20,000 ruggedized computers, and it was the first generation of mobile commercial computing. Up till then, nearly all that kind of computer was in tanks and military vehicles. That's obviously a very different situation to what Corben is likely to face. But for music, this might be equivalent to putting together a band or group to produce an album. For your own profession, it could be anything where you own putting together a team to take on a complex task that requires the knowledge and skills of several people, something that's beyond you as an individual. Try to think now what that task could be. Who would you ask to get involved? Or indeed, who would ask you to get involved, and why would they want you? How would you motivate them? How would you stretch them to give their best? Or if you're part of a team and not the leader, how are you going to make the best value add to the end results? If you're in an interview and talking about getting a particular job and being involved in particular teams, show them that you're enthusiastic about being a player, being involved, and want to make a contribution. That'll convince them far more than the particular level of knowledge you have at that given moment in time, because organizations are used to having to skill up their people and make knowledge available to them Often, some of the knowledge is quite secret to that particular organization, especially at the moment in California with the so-called FANG companies. Until you're inside that company, what they do and how they do it is kept a very big secret. So it's all about attitude and potential. That'll be what gets you the job.
So I have to farm it out to those people. And I even have another project manager person to pull it all together. And I've had 11 people working on one bid before now. And it's a real skill, pulling a bid together, okay? Bid management, stuff like that. Now, if you're leading a team like that, you need them to think they're cleverer than you are, because you want them to be on their game, coming out with their clever stuff. So sometimes you have to look like you haven't a clue. And then they think, well, I do. You know, it's this.
Yeah.
And they're really proud of themselves.
Yeah.
And the more you kind of intrude on that space and say, right, well, they want mobile devices in the vans. And when the guy comes in the morning to collect his van, he wants the computer to be preloaded with all his trips. And if as a salesperson you think, I think the best way to do that is if we actually integrate it with, you know, the Q4 mandated protocols or something, then you've gone into their space.
Yeah. And suddenly they don't feel like they should.
Yeah, and then they're just following what you said, what you told them to do. Or junior people tend to take suggestions as instructions. And what you're doing is you're shutting off their skills.
You need to allow them to think.
Yes, you need them to think. And so being a bit vague, or even not being afraid to be wrong. So you could say, I think we, you know, to do that, imagine we were in the UK, you know, I think we ought to use the WiMAX G2 protocols. Now, yeah, but this is, so I've gone into a technical space.
Yeah.
All right. And they're going to say, Graham, there aren't any WiMAX G2 protocols. WiMAX only works with G3. Okay.
Yeah.
So they've scored a little point.
Yeah.
But you've got them going where you want them to go.
Yeah.
You want them to be thinking, what's the best protocol? How do we get information onto that computer? And then if they're good, they'll actually say, and by the way, Graham, did you realize we don't just have to load it up in the morning? We can keep that database up to date. When they've done a job, they'll be able to sort of sign off that they've done it. And online, we can beam them the next job. We can make the whole thing interactive. Rather than they go out for the day thinking that's their load and suddenly they break down or that customer calls up and cancels and you can't do it. So you finish up with a better solution. And then you go back to the company who's offered you the RFP saying, you know, bid against this. You actually say, yeah, well, we can do all that. But did you realize also you can do this and this and this? And that's going to be a much better solution. And they think, wow, these people really do know what they're talking about. We'll choose them.
Okay, I follow what you're saying. So by giving someone a space for them to grow within the task that you've set,
yes,
they'll overgrow almost.
Yes.
They'll take it one step further.
But you picked your team, you know they've got the potential to do that.
Yes.
You need them to do that. Okay.
So in order to do the best job, you've selected a group of people that you know do know stuff that you don't know, or will be able to do stuff that you wouldn't be able to do by yourself. And then
those people are precious. I used to cover them with wine and chocolates and you know, dinners and parties and you know.
So rather than you setting them get to this level and then just getting there and stopping, you say get to this level and then they say I can do better than that because Graham doesn't know what he's talking about, and then they go one step further than they would have done if you'd set them higher.
Yes.
Comprende.
Okay. It's a leadership technique. Now here's the point to us now, here and now, is I need to use those kinds of techniques with you, because in this conversation, you're my techie. And
Yes.
I want you to do better than what I say.
Yes, I think that there's a lot of, because this is a total. Okay, so the difference between you doing those, talking about protocols with people that know about protocols is, you say go to here, and they know how to go to there, and they know how to go a step further.
Okay.
In that, you are their leader, but they're not your students.
This is Corben's old subconscious questioning what is going on. The meta-language of what Corben says here is that he is not sufficiently expert to know how to grow and wants me to tell him. It's a matter of who owns the direction of the learning process. I'm making him responsible for his own learning, which includes pulling stuff from me as well as other sources. I am saying to his subconscious, you don't have to be restricted by who you are now and what you own now. You need to be imagining yourself in the future and thinking where you want to get to, and then interact on that basis. So become more active rather than passive in the learning process.
They are actually your work colleagues who specialize. Whereas I know we're trying to keep it adult to adult so we can flow a conversation and actually both learn, but you know this stuff and I don't.
So, but I deliberately, for example, one of the things I do with you is I make you our tech champion. And if you watch me talking about that that 1 terabyte external non-SSD drive, I don't call it that. I call it that box thing. Can you make that box thing work, Corben? Like that.
Do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, because
damn.
I've
been one step behind for 18 years. I've been many steps behind, but yeah. No, that's true.
It's a technique.
That's true. I have noticed you doing that as well, because you always ask me when we were talking about mics and things. I know you've done some research, but you're always asking me to look up the best mic solutions and webcam solutions and things. And I'd try and explain it in simple terms, because I was like, he doesn't know. What's he on about? And then you'd come out with all the product names, even though I hadn't mentioned them yet, exactly what they did, where to find them and how much they were. And we hadn't I wasn't even aware.
I'm using a social intelligence-based soft skill to change the relationship for this and the next stages of the dialogues. It's basically thought of as, let's partner together for the win-win and let's have fun. In most education, the teacher has to be an authority figure and cannot do this, even if they would love to. And I'm sure there are many, many teachers possibly watching this series and thinking, it's all very well for him, I'd love to be teaching like that, but there are so many restrictions on me. And I empathize with that. And I think I'm trying to provide an as well as style of learning that complements the academic style of learning, which in all reality is pretty much the only one available to young people today. In step 40, we're going to continue with raising your awareness of the kind of techniques used by leaders to try and get the most out of you. Not in an exploitative way, but in a win-win kind of way. So party on.